Hi readers, this is Diane. I want to talk to you about one of my favorite writers of all time. His name is Stewart O'Nan, O''N''A''N. He is not one of those writers that comes out with a new book every year, but maybe every 2 or 3 years. The one I have in my hand is Last Night at the Lobster. It's another short book. You know how much I love short stories. This is a short novel. It comes in at about 146 pages, also set at Christmas time. Beautifully written. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but this is a lovely little book. It's about the closing of the Red Lobster in this small town. It's set in the corner of a parking lot in a mall in New England, something that we can all relate to. Stewart writes beautifully. Everything he's written, they're all so different. His book, A Prayer for the Dying, my favorite book, one of my favorite books ever. The Circus Fire, it's nonfiction. It's about a circus fire that happened in Hartford, Connecticut in the 50s. It's a lot lengthier than this book. Snow Angels, also a nice book. Ocean State is his most recent book, and it has a hold list, so you'd have to wait for that one. I read it a couple of weekends ago, and it was very well done. So Stewart O'Nan, take a look for some of his books. There's a lot in our catalog, and I hope you enjoy him.
Hello, I am Patti, Head of Youth Services at the Goffstown Public Library. And today, for my pick of the week, I'm actually going to highlight a series in a particular collection. Before I share the series with you, I will ask you a question. Do you know what the fastest growing collection in the children's room is? Well, I will tell you. It is graphic novels. Some people refer to these as comics because the format reads like a comic. However, comics are typically much shorter. Think of the comics that you see in the newspaper, for instance, whereas a graphic novel is an entire book written with that format. So kids are just loving graphic novels. And one of our fastest growing series within that collection is Phoebe and her unicorn. So if you like unicorns and you like fantasy and you have a child, whether or not they love to read or perhaps they don't love to read, the graphic novel collection is a great place to look. We have a variety of fiction as well as nonfiction titles. So I invite you and encourage you to come in and check it out.
Hi all, this is Stacey, Teen Services at the Goffstown Public Library, and I wanted to talk to you about Poetry Month. Poetry Month happens in April. It's National Poetry Month, and I want you to visit the second floor of the library where we will have a great display of poetry. And not just poetry though, something called novels and verse. So maybe poetry might be hard for you, or you've tried it and you just can't get into it, so why don't you try a novel and verse? Do you want to know what that is? Simply, it is a novel-length narrative, but it's written in the form of poetry. And one of my favorite ones is called Voices by local author David Elliott. And Voices is about the final hours of Joan of Arc. You might love it. I hope to see you on the second floor during the month of April for National Poetry Month. Bye.
What causes brains to become diseased? I've often wondered about this because when you think about your head, it's this wonderful helmet built in. And my curiosity was slated by a book called A Molecule Away from Madness by Sarah Manning Peskin. It's a slim novel and the best kind of armchair science that I know. It tells you not only about people who currently have the disease, the history of the disease, how we've researched it, and what we can do to treat it now. It's fascinating, and I highly, highly recommend it if you've ever had reason to wonder why somebody's brain wasn't quite right.
Hi everyone, I'm Liz Erickson, Adult Services Librarian, and my pick of the week that I'd like to share this week is the new collection of one of my favorite comic series of all time, Paper Girls. Written by Brian K. Vaughan, drawn by Cliff Chang, colored by Matt Wilson, and lettered by Jared K. Fletcher. If you are someone who wants to get into comics but is afraid you don't know where to jump in, luckily this collection contains all 30 issues of this fantastic series. So the story follows 4 girls who deliver newspapers in suburban Cleveland in 1988. Without saying too much, they stumble upon something they should not have and end up in the middle of a war between 2 factions, and this war is being fought on a scale bigger than anything they could have possibly imagined. Is that vague enough for you? Because one of the most fun parts of this book is all the twists and turns and reveals, so I don't want to take away too much of the fun for you. But I will say I would describe it as an action, adventure, sci-fi, coming-of-age romance. Basically, I think if you are a fan of Stranger Things, you would be a fan of this book. The art by Cliff Chang is absolutely fantastic. The neon color palette and the character designs really make the 80s like pop off the page. Although the characters in this book are younger, there's a lot to love in this book for adults and teens alike. So pick up Paper Girls, the complete story.